So I guess my favorite kind of music to write with my friends in my band is progressive rock. And I have a couple of different approaches, really, again, coming from a place that isn't very music theory based. It's kind of forced me into a few processes and perspectives that have kind of made the writing process happen a little bit more efficiently. So I think the overall approach that I take to a riff or a chord progression is one that takes in a few different emotions, really. So firstly, if I'm writing something heavy, for example, it's going to be quite an edgy, heavy kind of sound with the right kind of tone, but rather than keeping it all one vibe, I'll then throw in some chords that maybe a term pull on the heartstrings a little bit, in the sense that they evoke a feeling when you're listening to it that you might not be able to explain, but it just makes you feel like you really like it. It inspires some sort of feeling inside. I know that sounds a little bit hippy-dippy, but it generally is my approach to writing sort of heavy progressive rock riffs. Most of the time I down-tune my guitars. I use a combination of both normal scale length guitars and baritones, which allow me to tune as low as drop G. And I find that to be really, really useful within trying to create a mood and atmosphere around writing chord progressions and riffs. I feel like for progressive music, it lends itself to a lower, moodier, deeper tuning, which is why I do that. But for the purpose of this guitar course, and to give you guys a good reference point, we're going to keep the guitar in standard tuning and just drop it to drop D. So that was just a quick example of a riff that incorporated what I was explaining, the difference between playing a riff, single note stuff that might sound quite heavy and edgy, and then putting some chords in there that kind of bring it home and evoke an emotional response to the listener. So here's a really basic example of how I'd go about choosing chords for a riff like that. I'll take something like the natural minor scale, playing it on one string. And now, because I usually tune to a drop tuning, so for example, drop D in this case, I can play all of those notes as chords. And I can take it one step further by adding a new note to each of those chords, or altering one of the notes in each chord to give me a major or a minor. So just by adding a major or a minor note to those drop D chords gave me a new harmonic landscape to play with. And what's quite nice is that if you start messing around with the order of those notes within that sort of natural minor scale chord progression, so now if I was to play as an example of completely randomizing the notes, you can turn that into a cool chord progression. So that'd be kind of how I'd approach getting a chord progression super fast, and then I can start messing with it even more with the rhythm of it and adding those major and minor intervals on top to give me a great progressive rock chord progression or riff that I might use in a song. So that's a basic example of how I approach the harmony side of my progressive riff writing, but where I'd approach things a bit differently is in the rhythm, because I find that within progressive rock or metal, the rhythms can be very confusing and can kind of go anywhere you want them to go. So I figured of a cool way of going about coming up with riffs that could be in odd time signatures is to count everything as a 16th note. So basically my riff could land on any 16th note within a bar, and then I could just choose to either start that riff again, complete the phrase, or just stop at a random point and start again and create, essentially, prog. I'm just playing 16th notes, trying to work out a cool riff, which we then worked out was in 11/16 afterwards, which in my opinion is quite prog. But that would be my approach, is I really don't want to be thinking about the timing of my riff in terms of a time signature. That's for the rhythm section to work out. For me, I just want to feel inspired by the groove that I'm creating and really disregard any kind of time signature information at that point. So that would be a basic overview of my process and perspective on writing progressive rock riffs. I want to reiterate that you really don't have to have a super heavy understanding of theory in terms of harmonic theory to be able to get your head around what I'm going to be showing you within this course. It's really trying to unlock imagination and try things a little bit outside of your comfort zone and feel confident doing that to then come up with interesting progressive riffs. So I hope that's given you guys a little bit of an insight into how I write progressive rock riffs. And I hope that's also inspired you guys to know that you don't have to have a huge amount of theoretical knowledge to get creative, use your imagination, and write some awesome progressive rock riffs. So let's crack on. I'll see you in the next lesson.